Market Watch videos are some of the most popular YouTube Yu-Gi-Oh content out there, and I can completely understand why. Now, if you've never watched one before, the basic idea is that the YouTuber takes a look at cards that are rising in price or falling in price, and then tells their watchers whether or not they should buy or sell those cards at their sort of peak value from the watcher's perspective. And that's awesome. It's not really the type of stuff that I make, but I do understand why people like it so much. One thing though is that those videos are completely speculative. They're not really taking a look at hard numbers of sales, they're just looking at price trends. And while that is interesting, part of the issue there is that a card could be rising in value without anyone buying it. It could just be artificially increased, or people could just be increasing the price. I think there's going to be a buyout, but no one's really buying it, and a lot of those Market Watch channels have no idea if those cards are actually selling. And that's what makes my sponsorship with TCG Players so interesting, because they have graciously given me some data sets on different packs and different releases where I can take a look at which cards are actually selling. Now, you might have seen this in my end of 2017 video where I took a look at the best-selling cards from the entire year, and if you remember that video, basically what we learned is that the best-selling cards often aren't the most expensive cards, and that makes sense. Many of the cards on that list, I think pretty much 9 out of the 10 of them, were less than $5, which says a lot about which cards are actually selling. Because while many of us can sort of take a look and say, okay, these certain cards are very competitive, like Evenly Matched or Heavy Metal Foes Electromite, therefore they must be selling a lot of copies, the vast majority of players are actually way more casual and way more budget oriented than the players that are playing those types of cards, which means that the majority of cards that are being sold are actually a lot less expensive. What makes Legendary Collection Kaiba so interesting is that there has been such an overwhelming amount of support for this set. There's so much hype going into it. There's great reprints, there's great casual cards, there's great competitive cards. Everything in the set is holographic. That's really different than the past Legendary Collections. In this set, you're getting all Ultra Rares and all Secret Rares, which is really great for players, because in the past, Legendary Collections sort of, people don't want to open the commons or the rares. They want the supers, ultras, and secrets. So Konami recognized that and just gave us all ultras and secrets, which is really awesome. But anyway, let's take a look at the top 10 best-selling cards from this set about the first week of this set's release, which is worth noting depending on when you watch this video. But we have about a weekend's worth of people buying these cards, and we can take a look at what people are liking the most from the set and what they plan on using in their decks. And of course, you can buy all of these cards on tcgplayer.com. The link will be in the description if you want to check them out, and I'll also throw the prices for these cards on the screen at the time of making this video. Anyway, let's jump right in. So number 10 is Sage with Eyes of Blue. Many of you have seen my recent Blue Eyes deck profile, or maybe you've seen my past Blue Eyes discussions, but if you have, you definitely know that Sage is a staple 3-of in every single Blue Eyes variant. Whether or not you're playing Chaos Max or a pure build or an invoked build, Sage is always a staple 3-of. It has an awesome search effect, it has an awesome special summon effect. It's just such an integral part of the Blue Eye strategy, and with this second reprint, third print, Sage is now sort of gotten as budget as it ever will get unless we see another reprint. And for a lot of players that are looking to pick up Blue Eyes at a discounted rate, this set is perfect for them, because almost all the cards in a Blue Eyes deck were reprinted in this Legendary Collection outside of alternative Blue Eyes White Dragon. But anyway, Sage is such a good card and such a staple in my deck that obviously a lot of people were looking to pick it up. Now at number 9, we have a card for a very competitive deck right now, and that is Sea Crush Wyvern. So this is a mainstay in all ABC variants. Obviously, it's the C part of the ABC Buster Dragon, and yeah, it's not the most popular of the pieces for the cards, and I should mention that Assault Core actually was the number 11 most sold card. It didn't quite make the top 10 list, but both these cards were sold a lot, and we'll see B Buster Drake show up later on. But what we can sort of learn from this is that many players aren't actually playing as many copies of C and A as they are of B. If we take a look at the recent top 32 at YCS Atlanta from Calvin Tahan, who played ABCs, he played 3 B and then 2 of both A and C, which might explain why B is so much higher on the list. But we'll talk about that in a second. Now, number 8 is a pretty surprising pick. We have Goddess of Sweet Revenge. This is one of the promos for the set, but it also comes as a secret rare like all the other promos in here. The promos themselves come as ultras and secrets, but this list is accounting for both rarities. Anyway, Goddess of the Sweet Revenge is a pretty crazy card that almost always will never resolve, but if you do manage to resolve it, it's basically a better evenly matched, and then also it's an emergency teleport for any monster in your deck. Pretty wild. I don't think there's any great way to actually resolve this effect. The only one that I've thought of is using Fairy Tale Snow to banish all the cards in your hand except for Goddess. That's like sort of a way you can trigger it, but outside of that, I think people are just sort of picking it up because it's a cool looking card and it's a cool new card. I don't think this will make any competitive impact though, but it is interesting to see it appear on this list ahead of a lot of other cards that I thought would be on the list, just because it's a card that not many decks can actually pull off successfully. Now next we have at number 7, Master with Eyes of Blue. It might surprise you that this is ahead of Sage, but keep in mind, and I talked about this when I opened this Legendary Collection Kaiba on my channel, Master has only seen one printing as a common, and well, I guess it got reprinted in the Megatins, but still as a common card, and that's not what Blue Eyes players want to play, because one of the coolest things about the Blue Eyes deck is that you can pretty much make the entire deck all foil cards, which is really awesome. However, Master has always been the one card out of the entire deck that only came as common, and it was super frustrating because this card is super powerful. It's not only good in the variants that play Brilliant Fusion, although it is extremely powerful in those decks, it's just good as a standard. Any standard Blue Eyes deck is going to want to play one of this card. It's such a great recovery card. It has a cool graveyard effect. It's just an awesome card all around. And now that it finally has a holographic printing, a lot of people, including myself, were looking to pick up some copies. Now at number 6, we have another staple 3 of a Blue Eyes decks, and that is the Melody of Awakening Dragon. This card gets a slick secret rare reprint. It's really cool looking. I think many of you saw me open a single copy in my Legendary Collection opening, and yeah, this card, there's not much to say about it. It's one of the best searchers in the Blue Eyes deck. It's your best opener by far, and now that it gets a rarity upgrade and at a discounted price compared to the past printings, I mean, if you remember, when this card was only a super rare, it actually saw a huge increase in price. Now it's really accessible, and I think a lot of people are looking to pick up this sort of secret rare, really cool looking version of it, which makes sense because this pack has really revitalized what people thought about Blue Eyes. People really want to start playing Blue Eyes with the new cards, but we'll get to that in a second as well. But anyway, the Melody of Awakening Dragon is a staple 3 of, so a lot of people are going to pick it up, which is why it's so high on this list. Now coming next, we have the White Stone of Ancients. Once again, another staple 3 of in Blue Eyes. This card, like the other 2 that I just mentioned, has had some reprints. It was reprinted as a common, it was reprinted as a secret in this set now, and then it has the original rarity as an ultra. So you have sort of a whole spectrum of rarities that people want to play. For players looking to get the most sort of shiny version of this card, they're definitely going to want to pick up the White Stone of Ancients in secret rare from this set, just because it looks so pretty. And once again, I did open one of these in my pack opening, and I do have to say it looks really good. So unsurprisingly, it's another Blue Eyes card making this list. But at number 4, we have B Buster Drake finally show up. So you can see a huge discrepancy between A, C, and B. And I know I sort of already talked about that, but really, I mean, B Buster Drake is the number 4 top selling card from this entire set, which shows people are really interested in actually picking up these versions of the cards, these higher rarity than super rare versions, because they were only printed in the structure deck. And by the way, when they were only printed in the structure deck, they actually were kind of pricey, and those structure decks are pretty hard to come by. They're long since sort of out of print. And anyway, people want to pick up the higher rarity versions. B Buster Drake is the most important of the main pieces, so a lot of people were looking to pick it up. I do want to note that ABC Buster Dragon has not made this list. People either already had copies, or maybe they had their friends give them some copies or something along those lines, but the Fusion Monster, sort of their boss monster, didn't make this list, which is kind of interesting. Anyway though, let's get to the top 3. So at number 3, we have Dragon Revival Rhapsody. Now, I have sort of raved about this card for weeks now. This card is so powerful in any Blue Eyes variant, but I especially like it in the Invoked variant, which is really cool because the Invoked variant was already sort of the best Blue Eyes deck out there. It was a lot more consistent and powerful than the other variants, and now they get this really cool revival spell. This thing is awesome. It's basically a double monster reborn. It can bring back not only Blue Eyes, but also Dragon Spirit of White, and then any dragon monster. Super awesome. And even if you aren't playing the Invoked variant, there's tons of spellcasters in every single Blue Eyes deck, such as Sage, such as Master, and also such as the number 2 pick of this set, which is the King of D. Once again, a card that I hyped up a lot in the last video where I talked about these 2 new cards, and this card really surprised me because when it first was revealed, I honestly didn't think it was that good because it has to discard a spell or trap card, and a lot of times in Blue Eyes, you want to discard your monsters, but this is a card that on paper might not seem very powerful, but when you put it into practice, it actually fixes a lot of the issues with Blue Eyes. Blue Eyes sometimes can dead draw a trade-in or cards of consonance, or even cards like Melody that aren't very good after the first copy resolves, and in all of those cases, you can now activate the King of D's search effect to grab Dragon Revival Rhapsody, the card we just talked about, while discarding the dead spells in your hand. This card is incredibly good, and while I do think Dragon Revival Rhapsody is better than King of D, at least in a wider application, it definitely fits into a lot more Blue Eyes variants, the King of D is still a very powerful card, and also the artwork is awesome. A lot of people want to see Lord of D playing this massive guitar with all these Blue Eyes heads on it. It's pretty cool looking, so that definitely is probably playing a factor into this card being the number 2 best-selling card. And anyway, let's jump to the number 1 pick, which some of you might not be surprised at, but I tried to let you know why this is going to be so surprising at the beginning of this video. The number 1 best-selling card from this set is Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. Now, I know many of you might have seen that coming, but that's why I tried to tell you at the beginning of this video, oftentimes the most expensive cards out of the set are not the best selling, and even more often they don't even make the top 10. So why is Ash Blossom a card that, to be completely honest, isn't that much cheaper than the original print? I mean, it certainly is cheaper, and we've actually seen Ash Blossom rise in price as every day has passed, and it's not quite a short print in this set. It definitely is harder to pull than the other ultra rares. It seems like they're really pushing for like the Blue Eyes support and the XYZ and VW machine monsters. They're really easy to pull and stuff like that. But Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, while it isn't a short print and while it isn't, I mean, it's the most expensive card in the set, it's not anywhere near the cheapest card in the set. Despite all those things, people are so excited for an Ash Blossom reprint, they are buying it in droves, which actually just blows my mind. I think this is the first time I've ever seen the most expensive card in the set also be the best selling. It's pretty much never happened in the history of TCG Player doing market watches in article form, which has been for like the past 2 to 3 years, which is pretty crazy to think about. But anyway, Ash Blossom, if you're playing competitively, you basically need 3 copies, and while this version isn't quite as expensive as the original print, it is still up there, and I think people were hoping it would get cheaper. Hopefully we see a downward price trend in the coming weeks. It still is pretty early on for the set. It's less than a full week after its official release, which is pretty crazy to think about. But man, I am super surprised that Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring was the number 1 top pick from this set. It's so unprecedented, and I know it might not seem like it is, but it truly is. Cards like this simply do not make the number 1 spot out of a set under any normal circumstances, so it's absolutely insane to think about. But anyway, that is going to wrap up this video. Thank you so much, TCG Player, not only for sponsoring this video, but for sponsoring videos every single month. And I think that you guys can kind of see why I picked this sponsorship, because now I have the opportunity to tell you which cards are actually selling. By looking at this list, we can see that there's a lot of hype for Blue Eyes decks and ABC decks, and that people are willing to pay $50 to $60 for Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring because they really need those copies. And I'd say in general that is a significant discount when you're thinking of a playset, considering the original print eventually got up to like $80 a copy. So if you're thinking of a whole playset, you're saving about $60 to $90, which is definitely not insignificant. Anyway though, I'll see you guys later. Bye.